Welcome to the Classroom Café, where it's all about brewing the conversation between fellow educators. This special presentation is brought to you by the United Federation of Teachers and the union's Member Assistance Program. Thank you for joining us today. We hope this podcast inspires you, nourishes you, and motivates you. Now let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Classroom Café podcast. I am Selma Williams, Mental Health Manager here at the UFT's Member Assistance Program. We are joined with our co-host, Janisa Costa.
Hi, I'm Janisa Costa, a Clinical Coordinator in Substance Use Liaison at the UFT's Member Assistance Program.
So today we are joined by SP Brown. SP has been an employment discrimination attorney for over 2 decades. She recently authored the novel entitled Gifts in Brown Paper Packages, and also a children's book called Kyrie's School Blues. SP, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today. I'll just start by talking a little bit about my journey to what I have begun to call finding your strength in strife, which didn't quite begin, at least in my mind, as thought out as that. I probably started my own personal sort of mental health journey after I was like a full adult, in terms of seeking and opportunities to really start to balance my my life and sort of dig into some things that were going on with me, emotionally, professionally, and such, and all of the challenges that come along with being a mom of 3, a busy executive, and just a woman. I'd been in therapy for a few years, and at some point, my therapist at the time said to me that I was not talking about the things that I needed to talk about in session. And, I had a number of things to bring to the table all the time. Those things were important topics and issues in my life that challenged me emotionally. And that's what I thought therapy was supposed to be about. And what he pointed out to me was that there were, a number of issues, and what he then defined as trauma, which I was like, I don't really know what you're talking about.
Who has trauma? I don't have
trauma.
Who
has trauma?
What are you talking about?
It kind of set me, it set me back for a minute. I actually think that session I walked out saying he doesn't know what he's talking about. I have to find a new therapist.
I'm sure I can imagine. I mean, I think anyone in sitting in the therapy seat, and then you're told that you have trauma that you're not talking about, would feel the same way. Of like, who are you to tell me that?
Correct. It's my life.
Yeah. It was very interesting, and I probably was about 40 at the time. But what that did was really challenge me to dig a little deeper. And he encouraged me to start writing because I really did not feel that it was helpful for me at the time to talk about things that I had only alluded to a little bit in session that really molded and shaped me. And, I was a successful attorney and, a busy mom and executive. And I felt a lot of shame around things that had occurred to me, with me in my childhood home. And I didn't think that they should define me.
Yeah. I'd like to give space for that. Thank you for sharing. I think that a lot of people, listening to this might be in your same situation or struggling with this, and that shame that you carried at that time. Would you mind telling us what steps did you take to overcome, to push through that, to seek help, to continue in that uncomfortable feeling?
I will tell you that therapy became my best friend.
Mm.
I was someone who did not would not miss my sessions. And, sitting in that space that was safe gave me the ability to explore feelings and emotions that, frankly, I didn't want to deal with most of my life, because they, strife, right, which is the word that I am really drawn to. Strife is a difficult thing. It does not necessarily have to define you, but it does inform. It informs our stories, right? As do all of our experiences. And writing, which is what, my therapist encouraged me to do, because I had shared in session that was something that, had always been soothing for me. Even as a child, reading and writing, really became an escape mechanism, a coping mechanism for me as a very young child. So, and I would write letters. I would write letters to my, childhood best friend. We were going through our own emotional turmoil at home, and we would write letters to each other. And I had talked about that in session, and he encouraged me to return to that process, really for myself, as a way to kind of process some things. And that is actually how finding your strength in strife, came about. I didn't come to that sort of concept until after Gifts and Brown Paper Packages, was written and published. But the writing of stories from sitting outside of myself, which is how the story began, really was about, working through a number of things. And it was helpful for me to find that strength by standing outside of the story, which is why the story was written in sort of third person. And I named the characters, differently from what they really were. I wrote a fictional story, and it gives you the ability to have creative license, right? It gives you the ability to really look at a situation from outside of it.
So a few things come to mind when I think about writing, right? Like, or anything that you do that's cathartic or that helps you to process time, right? I think when I see clients and members, right, that most people want to know, how long is this going to take? Like, how long do I have to do this for? Am I going to be writing forever? Am I going to be in therapy forever? And, I have an answer that I give my clients, but I'd like to hear from your perspective. Like, was that ever a question in your mind? Like, your journey, did it have a timetable? Did you need it to be over by a certain time?
That's such a great question. It's actually one that I haven't received before. When thinking about it, I mean, no, unlike I think a lot of people, while therapy was not something that had been a part of my life prior to starting, in my late 30s, early 40s, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed having a space where I could explore and just talk and not be judged. And I didn't really look at that as something that should end. So I didn't have an end point. And when it came to writing, I had already been writing. I'd been writing creatively at night. So when you talk about time, I had 3 children that were very active, and I had a busy job, and I would write at night. After my mothering in the evening was done, and whatever I had to do, going on with, my husband and my household, after everyone was in bed, I would sit up and write. So, time is something that I never sort of associated as, with a barrier here. And, my therapist now says to me, I laugh with her when I say, I'm going to be in therapy forever. So I hope you know that at some point I'm just going to have you on retainer so that you just have to answer me whenever I call you.
Absolutely. I think that's a beautiful answer. When I've heard this analogy that you learn all these skills, right? You gain all these skills in therapy and through life that help you to support you. They're almost like a scaffold. Mm-hmm. And the person in the podcast said, when you build a ramp, right, to a building to provide accessibility for people with disabilities, you don't, when they get up the ramp, you don't ask them how long they're going to need the ramp for, right? Like the ramp is there to support you.
That's right.
Forever.
That's right.
Because it's something that you need in order to be your best self.
Right. Oh, so what a great analogy.
To destigmatize that need for therapy as something, it's just for 6 weeks, or it's for a month, or it's for 6 years, and then I'm done. And it could be that, you can end your treatment, but just understanding that it's a journey, right? Like I like to highlight that we're all on it.
We're all on it. And, I love that analogy that you just made, because that's exactly the way I see it. I mean, I'm someone who exercise is, something that's germane to my lifestyle. I'm very active. I really like to lift weights and, eat right. And that's something that I feel like I'm going to do as long as God allows my body to do it, right? I look at therapy in the same way. My journey to finding my strength and strife is an ongoing journey. I have to do this work every single day, every day. And my therapy will be to me, as long as I have the ability to sustain it, because I think we have to recognize that mental health services are something that you are very privileged if you can take advantage of them, right? It's not a given, right? Everyone doesn't have insurance. Everyone doesn't have, employment that offers that as an option. So it's not accessible to everyone. And, I tell my kids all the time, because, I'm like Oprah. If you remember Oprah, when she first had her show, she was giving out cars. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car. In my house, you get a therapist, you get a therapist, you get a therapist. Everybody gets a therapist. Okay. So, my son is 15. My youngest is 15. He has sessions weekly. My 18-year-old, who's a freshman in college, she has sessions weekly. And I have a 24-year-old who, while she's an adult, and, sometimes she falters in terms of maintaining, she knows that it's a real necessary aspect of her life. And, she gets back into it. That's just the way I view it, that the finding your strength and strife is and particularly for those of us who are in fields that require us to interact and impact others, which in education, like that's the role, right? It is, and it's really important that we are, as folks who call themselves educators and who are privileged enough to have the skill set in the education to be in that role, keeping yourself on track with respect to maintaining your mental health, I think is just vital.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Your, what you had shared earlier about how your strife is an experience, as part of your experience. It's not what defines you. And I think holding on to that and keeping that sort of mentality and mindset when it comes to the struggles that we all experience in life, can really help to build up our resilience and help us to overcome other challenging things that we will be confronted with in the future, right? Life is crazy. It throws things at us all the time.
Yeah.
And definitely. Having, I know you share that having that support of therapy has been a part of your journey of finding your strength and strife. That's really great.
Yeah. And, and building the sort of gifts model framework, which I have done really over the last year. It's so interesting how this has evolved. This process and this journey that I'm on has evolved. I thought when I completed this book in 2017, and I went through a long editing process. and I'm talking about the novel now, I knew that the book was about resilience. I knew that I sought to write a book that really, really exemplified the journey of a young African American girl who, from a statistical perspective, from an adverse childhood experience perspective, was not expected to survive, right? Was not expected to excel and prosper. And my goal, after I wrote the book and realized, wow, this is something that would be really powerful to publish in terms of impacting others. I thought this is about resilience, and I want to speak to resilience, to adults and to young people. And so the gifts model framework really came out of me exploring that as a concept, and developing sort of 5 steps to what that really means. What does it mean to find your strength in strife? What's the best way to do it? And so here I am.
Yeah. And you shared with us previously, outside of this podcast, a little bit about your journey of, dedicating your life and your time to publishing the book, Gifts in Brown Paper Packages, and creating this framework. Can you expand on that a little bit and tell our listeners what that's been like for you?
Oh my goodness. I mean, journey is... I keep saying, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I mean, it is why I've started calling this the gift journey, because every single turn has been, provided an unexpected, sometimes pitfall, sometimes really exciting opportunity. So the last year since Gifts in Brown Paper Packages was published has been interesting. I started out thinking that I was going to, I left my job in March of 2021 after practicing employment discrimination law for just about 20 years. And I said, I'm going to take a year to position myself from a book publication perspective to, really be able to, even if I return to the employment law workforce, or working a traditional job, I can be impacting people on the side, right? I can be utilizing this book as a vehicle to access communities that really could use to hear this message, right? And I started out by saying, okay, once the book was published, I think that this is a good piece of content for high school students, 11th and 12th graders. It's written at an advanced level. I believe it has literary value. And that was my goal. And I had a friend of mine who is a PhD and professor who read the book, and halfway through it, early in 2021, she called me and she said, she actually sent me a text message and she said, we need to talk. I'm going to set up a call with you. This book is not about domestic violence. You're talking about it in the domestic violence vein. And I know that that's an issue that you're really drawn to, but you're really limiting it. It's about so much more. And the impact really should be with, folks in the social work and counseling spaces, not high school. I think it's way too advanced and the issues are complex, and let's talk about it. So that was really the first juncture in the journey where I had the Zoom call with her, and I was like speechless because she had drafted this 3-page document with all these themes that she pulled out of the book. And I was floored. And, her goal at that point was she wanted to connect me with her colleagues who were in the social work and mental health space for me to get the opportunity to sort of access academia in that way. So I actually spent much of 2021 attempting to connect with academics in the social work space, counseling space, and also high school as well. And I did not make a lot of headway because what I found is that it's really hard to get busy people, people who are professors who are in academia and teachers who teach are really busy, and they don't have time to read for pleasure. a 262 page novel. So that was like that was a surprise, because I said, I had at least 36 people who had read the book in manuscript format of all different professions, including the education and social work environments, and people who are close to me, in what I call on my bench, and they were all clamoring for me to get this book out and get it into the spaces that they thought it would really have a resounding impact. And that didn't happen. So that was a setback, because I didn't anticipate that it was going to be hard to get people to read the book.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah.
First and foremost, let's recognize this friend, right?
Oh, she's amazing.
Sometimes you just need an honest friend who's willing to see,
amazing,
and help you bring your vision to the next level.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my goodness. Her name is Professor Linda Silva Thompson, and I I adore her. She's like one of my go-tos. She's brilliant, and she really will pick an issue apart. And she picked this book apart and said to me, it's beautifully written. That there's a dearth of research to practice content out there, particularly featuring people of color. And that was something that she pointed out to me as an avenue that I should focus on. So I did that for much of the year. And then, to get me to like sort of where I am right now, mid-year 2021, where I was not making a lot of headway with just getting audiences. I had a state educator who read the book and said to me, he listened to my pitch, and he said to me, "Look, I know you have heard that this book would be great for high school or college or, graduate or PhD programs, but I think you're barking up the wrong tree. I think you should write this book as a children's book." And there's a lot of impact there. And I think I had that conversation in April, and I hung up that call and said, okay, he's crazy. I don't have time to write another book. I was like, is he kidding me? Like, I'm in the midst of marketing this book and trying to make headway with this book. And, a couple of months later, in this book club book club event where a number of people, including, Tina, attended, I had a third grade teacher say to me, this book was fabulous. Former third grade teacher who's writing in another area for 3rd to 5th grade level. She said to me, you can do this. You write amazingly. So you could do this at a 3rd to 5th grade level. And I think it was her saying it that really made me say, okay, this is the second person who has encouraged me to do this. This is not coincidental. There are no coincidences. This is ordained. So I actually sat down a couple of months later, and I sat down over a weekend and wrote the first 4 chapters of Kyrie's School Blues. And that story was born.
Wow. Well, it's you said journey, or we laughed about it being a journey in the beginning, but it really has. And in all of it, right, this idea and this theme of like finding the strength and strife, right? You talked about initially when like therapy, and then now in your journey with gifts and with your novel, you experienced some strife there too, and like the audiences were not who you thought that they would be, but so much more has also come out from it.
Oh, it's been
by just
been amazing.
Sticking with it and finding new audiences, and you share that the story is very personal because it is your own, based on your own story. And it takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to share your own story in a public space, never mind in like a novel. But continuing to be vulnerable and share your story for other people to hear has led you down this path of now having 2 books.
Yeah.
One children's book and one novel.
Yeah, and it's been phenomenal. But Janice, you talk about the strife. That's it's a continuum, but what I have gotten to is we have to acknowledge the strife, we have to acknowledge the trauma that comes out of the strife, but we have to recognize how it informs us, but we don't need to sit in it, right? We don't need to focus on it. And that's why, out of, writing Kyrie School Blues, what I've also done is developed a platform with professional development courses where I'm essentially I've essentially taken the gifts lens framework, which is how you find your strength and strife. You sharpen your lens through this gifts framework, GIFTS, and I can kind of go through that if you're interested. But frankly, what it has given me is the ability to figure out how to pull the truth out of the trauma, right? And just focus on the truth that informs and makes us who we are. So, and that's the journey that I'm on right now. So, really quickly, the gifts framework is, G stands for grace. And, grace is something that we, really have to employ in order to get to a point where we can find the strength and strife, right? Figure out what the value is. We have to be looking at our situations. We have to be looking at our experiences that are traumatic and that are challenging, that are viewed as adversity. And we have to be giving ourselves grace as well as grace to others, right? The I stands for intention. Right. We have to be moving with intention. We have to be talking with intention. We have to monitor our words, right? How do we do that, right? How do you educate with intention? How do you speak to your students with it? How do you do that with intention, right? So that's another aspect of the gifts framework. F stands for forgiveness, right? Which is an extension of grace. Right. There has to be the ability to, if you're going to find the value in the strife, you have to be able to forgive yourself, right? Forgive others, and that's a difficult, we could spend a couple of hours just talking about grace and forgiveness, right? The concepts are so widespread, but, and everyone is in a different place in their journey. You may not be in the place where you're ready to give forgiveness to the person or entity that hurt you or harmed you, but recognizing the necessity of forgiving yourself first is really important, because how else do you shed the shame and the guilt, right? And that's the F in the gifts framework. The T is trauma, right? Because we have to recognize the trauma, but I want to cross that out and talk about the truth. So the T is really trauma crossed out and truth bounding through, right? What is your truth, right? And the S is story. What is your story? And it's also, what's the strength in that story, right? What's the strength in that strife? So my framework is really what I'm calling educating through the gifts lens. And that came out of, I wrote an article for Essence Magazine, which they asked me for, and they asked me to write an article focused on the book. And I was like, well, I'm not going to write a book summary. That doesn't make any sense. I want to incentivize people to read the book. I'm going to write, and I decided to write an article about finding your strength and strife. And I called it the Gifts Lens. And I developed this 5-step framework really in the course of writing that article. And then Essence didn't publish it. They just, the editor that asked for it left, and the new editor came on and decided that this wasn't what they wanted to focus on. And that was a huge disappointment to me. I was so upset about it. But what's the gift in that? I mean, there was a tremendous gift in that situation, because I developed this framework because they asked me to write about finding your strength and strife, or to write about the book. And I decided to write about finding your strength and strife. So so that's long-winded. I'm sorry, I've been talking for too long, but that's how I sort of got to where I am right now in this journey, because not only am I have book one of a children's book series, which is entitled The Gift's Journey, but I also have a educational consulting PD framework, an author visit framework that is underpinned by this concept of finding your strength in strife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that gifts framework that you just shared. We as mental health clinicians, we encourage people all the time to have grace for yourself, be intentional about how you talk to other people and how you talk to yourself, right? Everything that you just shared within the gifts framework are things that we always encourage in counseling and in therapy as well. And so I love that you put an acronym to it and you developed this framework, and you're reaching so many more people with your book, with both of your books, right? On high school and adult level, as well as now in a children's realm too. It's going to be so valuable and important to really share that.
Thank you for saying that. I need that positive validation. It helps.
Of course. So I think we asked you we were really excited to have you on this podcast because we wanted to talk about your book, and we've talked about so many wonderful things that have led up to Gifts in Brown Paper Packages and what's come up afterwards. If readers are interested in reading Gifts in Brown Paper Packages, what can they expect from that?
Well, if readers buy the book, which I hope you do, and they can do that by going to my website, SP Brown Writes. It's SP Brown, one word, WRITES.com. And, there's a lot of information there about the book. There's a soundtrack that goes along with the book because music is an underpinning theme throughout the book, and there's songs that are associated with each chapter. But what readers can expect is a real journey. It's a journey that's not easy to read at times. I haven't had a number of people tell me that they couldn't put it down, but sometimes they wanted to because it was hard. But Kyrie is a character that doesn't disappoint. she's strong. Sometimes she's really funny. Sometimes she is, thoughtful, but she is resilient. And what the reader will find is that she really goes through the journey of finding her truth and gets to a point at the end of the story that she really comes of age. And that's what it is. It's a coming of age story. So.
Awesome. Beautiful. And where can readers find Gifts?
So they can find Gifts in Brown Paper Packages in a number of places. My website, which I just mentioned, is one. It's available on Amazon. They type in Gifts in Brown Paper Packages or SP Brown. The book will come up, and it is recently been released in audiobook. So I'm really excited about that.
Nice.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Thank you. I spent the entire summer recording, and so it is. I did do the recording on the book, and that was hard work. You would be surprised how difficult it is to read out loud without messing up.
Yes.
So, lots of hours recording, but I'm hoping that will make it more palatable and easier for busy folks to take the content in. So it's available. It will be available on like 24, I think, platforms, but they're coming out. They're becoming available very, kind of slowly. So Barnes and Noble and Kobo are the ones that are available right now, and I have those available on my website as well. So, if folks go to the link tree on my website, they can have access to not only purchasing the book, either from me directly or from Amazon or Barnes and Noble for the Gifts in Brown Paper Packages hardcover. But the only place you can get a signed copy is from my website. So that's the incentive to buying from my website.
That is the right time. Well, thank you so much, SP, for joining us
you're
today.
welcome. This has been so much fun.
And as a teaser, we know you'll be back next month as well for part 2. So those who enjoyed this discussion, look forward to our next month's discussion as well.
Yes, looking forward to it.
All right. So see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you again for having me. Bye.
Thank you, SP.
Once again, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Classroom Café. If you are a UFT member, the Members Assistance Program can be reached at 212-701-9620 or at mapinfo@uft.org.